I am so excited to be talking to John today. John does not have a million rental properties, and he didn't achieve FIRE in just 3 years. So why am I talking to him? Because John is the perfect example of slow and steady wins the race with consistent investing. John retired from his W-2 at the age of 57. I can't wait for you to learn how he did it and to show you how you might be able to recreate his financial journey too. As you know, this is the FIRE series, which is sponsored by our friends over at Baselane. I'm Mindy, and I am thrilled to introduce BiggerPockets' new partner, Baselane, the all-in-one banking and financial management platform built for independent real estate investors. Baselane combines banking, rent collection, and bookkeeping to create streamlined workflows that save you time and give you a clear view of your cash flow. Get organized with unlimited accounts that you can create for each property. Stop wasting time on manual bookkeeping with Baselane's auto-tagging for your transactions. Visit baselane.com/biggerpockets and join more than 40,000 landlords who have stopped the busy work and started growing their rental portfolio with Baselane. Now, let's get into John's FIRE journey. John, thank you for joining me today. I'm so excited to share your story.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So how did you discover the FIRE movement?
You know, I discovered it before it was even a thing, I think. Because I'm almost 60 years old now. And I discovered some things from my dad, but also from listening to a radio show that was on the weekends when we were taking road trips called Bob Brinker's Money Talk. And he talked about investing and index funds and getting to critical mass. And I came from a pretty humble beginning, and that was something that really was appealing to me. And that's kind of how I got started with my little money journey.
What did Bob talk about on his show that made you think that retiring before age 65 was possible?
He talked about consistent investing and doing it in low-cost index funds. It was just, it was sort of the FIRE movement objectives before I even knew there was a FIRE movement, because this was from, probably the late 1990s. So he talked about things that just made sense to me. And he talked about rental real estate too. So I have one rental, which is plenty for me. So, but that kind of got me going.
What were you investing in when you were hearing from Bob, and what was he recommending that you invest in?
Well, he talked about index funds a lot, but I, being in my late 20s, I was a little more greedy to that, and I thought that active managed funds could do better for me. So I invested in a lot of things at Vanguard and Fidelity that were not index funds because, like I said, I wanted to get there faster. At least that was my perception of how to get there faster. And so those were my investments through my 401k and also through my IRA.
Okay, so John in his 20s was investing in actively managed funds. What does John currently invest in?
Almost all index funds. I did have an actively managed fund at my last job that I was in for about 10 years, which just killed it. It had a lot of all the big tech names in it. And I rode that up really, really well. It really did great. But when I finally pulled the trigger on retiring, I dumped almost all of it and put it into a just straight up index fund.
What about the B word? What percentage of your portfolio is in bonds?
Well, that's funny. Funny that you ask. So before COVID hit, I was about 90-10. So 90% stocks, 10% bonds. When that market dropped during COVID, I lost probably over $600,000 in about a month, and I finally figured out I'm a little more risk averse than I thought. So when the market came back, that gave me a time to rebalance, and now I'm about 65% stocks now.
Okay.
But it took a good slap upside the head to figure that out for me.
So going back to listening to Bob on the radio, what was the most significant change that you made once his message started clicking with you?
I think the biggest thing was just discipline of investing every 2 weeks, in your 401k. And at that time, IRAs only had a $2,000 limit, so it was maxing out your IRA. But and I did sales, so my income was up and down and kind of all over the place, and the same with my wife. So our biggest thing was to be consistent. and just to do it, to invest first, no matter what, no matter how things were good or how things were not so good in those, month or two or whatever it might be. So it was having discipline.
Yeah, I have heard that investing consistently, no matter what, I keep hearing that advice almost like it works or something.
Because it does.
And yes, I'm sure there are going to be times in your investing journey where, something comes up and you can't invest this week or this particular cycle. Okay, that doesn't mean that you skip it the next time when things have caught back up again. Like your furnace goes out and you need new tires and the roof just sprung a leak. Okay, maybe you don't invest this month. But then next month, once everything's all paid off or, whenever everything's all paid off, you start back up again. Because when you skip and you skip and you skip and you skip, then you're not being consistent. And you have to be as consistent as you possibly can be. Do you and your wife share finances or have separate finances?
It's kind of both. Since our 401ks and IRAs are in our own names, we're obviously beneficiaries on each other's accounts. At our credit union, savings and checking, they're in our own names, but we're on each other's accounts.
Is your main finances are all together?
Like we don't have a shared checking account. We have separate checking accounts. We also have separate savings accounts, which we just started off as when we, were dating and stuff. And then never really put one together. So that's something we're talking about now because my wife's going to retire too.
Oh, she's going to retire. So you're wife-fi right now.
Well, kind of. She stopped working in July. Her project ended, and so she's debating on whether to work for one more year. She has another project coming up, and it looks like she's going to do it. So it would go from January to the end of November next year, and then she'd call it good. So yes, I have been Wi-Fi. I'm very proud of that. I'm always proud of her too.
If she didn't take this next project, you would be fine financially, correct?
Correct.
Did you have any sort of goal in mind with regards to like a FI number or a FI timeline when you first started listening to Bob?
Not when I first started listening to him, no, but as our portfolio grew, you started thinking about things. It's like, okay, if we hit, once you hit the first million and then you hit the second million, it's like, oh, well, we could start thinking about this because we have rental income as well. And then as we got, especially into our early 50s, maybe 51, 52, it's like we could stop doing this anytime. And then it was the goal was really $3 million in liquid assets, not counting our real estate, and that was really the big kicker.
So what circumstances did you retire under? Was it your idea or was it somebody else's?
It was really somebody else's. I worked for a major membership organization, we'll call it that, so I don't have to plug them. And I handled external advertising for their company. And so when there were companies around the United States that wanted to reach this membership group, they would deal with me. And the company decided to get rid of its email products and its magazine product, member magazine. And so they said they were going to stop that at the end of a year, at the end of 2022. And so my job would be eliminated. And I had a pretty long runway, and they gave me a decent package. So I decided, you know what? I'm good. That's probably the kick in the butt I needed to stop working, because I was falling into, I'll work one more year, because you're making decent money, and well, now the kids are out of college, but still, there's some projects I'd like to do that take some cash, and it really was kind of a blessing for me that project ended.
So this is kind of similar to my husband's scenario. We had reached our FI number, and then he's like, well, I'm not sure if the numbers really work. So he worked one more year, and then he went down part-time. And by the time he finally quit, he had accepted it and was ready to leave. And then 2 weeks after he left, his whole project got canceled. And I've always thought that it was really lucky for him that he came to this on his own timeline, because Otherwise, he would have had this like, what if? Do you ever look back and think, gosh, I wish I would have been able to make that decision by myself, or have you come to terms with it?
I still haven't come to terms with it. I wanted to make that decision on my own.
Okay.
But I do still sell some advertising for other groups. I have a little side gig. And so it was kind of a way to let me step out of it with only working like 1 or 2 hours a week. So I still have I do a lot of the same things. I just don't do it very often. It's like I eliminated 38 hours of my week, So I don't have benefits or anything, but what the heck? It works out okay.
Okay, so in terms of your monthly spending, how much does this like 2 hours a week generate?
Generates about a little over $3,000 a month.
Okay.
So I think I made 40 grand last year, and I have to pay my own taxes out of that and stuff. So that would be gross. But it's worked out just fine.
Yeah. Okay. And that's a nice chunk of change coming in, but also that pushes back your need to start withdrawing at the 4% rule.
When I hit about 50 years old and thought about retiring early, I realized I didn't have very much money in a brokerage account. All my money was in 401k and IRAs, and the same with my wife. So I did a quick turn then, and any bonuses or whatever, we built our brokerage accounts so that we would be able to check out early before we could, I'm still not old enough to get to my IRA money or my 401k money. So that was a big red flag. They went up and was like, oh no, we need to address this right away. So we did.
Yeah. On the BiggerPockets Money podcast, we call that the middle class trap, where you may have enough money to retire early, but it's in your age restricted accounts, your 401k, your IRA, or your home equity. You could have $5 million in net worth, but if $4 million of that is in your home equity, what are you going to do to tap into that? You don't really want to get a home equity loan at 7% or higher. And you can't access all these other funds. Although I've said this before, and I'll continue saying it, the Mad Fientist has an article called How to Access Your Retirement Funds Early that gives you multiple different ways, both tax advantaged penalty advantaged and not penalty advantaged, to access those funds if you need to.
Right. Yeah, I'm familiar with the rule of 55 and that kind of stuff, but that just wasn't something I wanted to do. I wanted to try to keep it as clean as possible. And we were able to pull that off. So we were fortunate.
So you mentioned that you hit a net worth of about $3 million, and that was comprised in mainly your 401k and IRA, your tax advantaged accounts. Let's talk about that rental property. What sort of, where is it located? What sort of income does that generate?
Right. So it's a townhouse that we bought right before we got married. And it's right next to Microsoft.
Oh, terrible location.
I know, it's awful. So, matter of fact, in almost 30 years of having it as a rental, we haven't had anyone in there that's not a Microsoft employee. So, so we do 2-year leases on that. That works out pretty well. It's probably worth now, I don't know, $600,000 or so. We might be a little bit under on rent, but I have a great renter that I just love, and so that brings in about $2,500 a month. It's been good. We've depreciated the whole thing, so we're just using that as we actually pay our taxes out of it, our property taxes and stuff like that. So we just put it all in a money market fund and then pay our taxes at the beginning of the year.
I love that. And then what year did you buy that? Because there's a time frame that you could just move back in and have that be your primary residence.
Probably bought that in 1992 or 93.
I think these rules changed like in the 70s or something. My parents had a house that they couldn't sell and turn into a rental, and then were able to move back into it because of some weird rules. They didn't have to pay back the depreciation or something.
Oh,
and it's
okay.
Maybe I'm making that up. If I'm getting it wrong, my parents don't listen to this, so they're not going to correct me, but somebody else might. Mindy at BiggerPockets.com. Let me know what I'm getting wrong there. But that I would give you just a pinch of advice to speak with a real estate tax professional, or a tax professional who understands real estate tax law, specifically with regards to depreciation recapture and old long-term purchases. I want to say you don't qualify, but I would hate to tell you that. And then you do qualify. And then I'm also going to ask my dad what he was talking about. I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, it might be a place we move back into and just keep as our Seattle home. And in the future, we've talked about that idea if we live elsewhere. So we'll see. There's a lot of balls up in the air.
That's always the case. It's nice to have all these different options to choose from.
Yeah, exactly.
So, John, if you were just discovering financial independence today, but it's back in your 20s, what would you change knowing what you know now? How would you have done your FI journey differently?
Oh, well, I definitely would have stuck with mainly index funds, but I also would have really taken advantage of the Roth products, whether it's a Roth 401k or a Roth IRA. Those weren't available when I first started my journey. And matter of fact, I've advised my adult kids, they're in their 20s, use as much Roth as you can, because someday you're going to be my age and you won't have to pay a dime of tax on it. So, and they're listening to that. And I think that's a good plan and a good way to go. Personally, that's my thing. So those, that would be a big one. And, I think we did pretty good being disciplined and keep everything, going into funds each month. So that was, we accomplished that. So I think the Roth products will really be the big parts. Oh, and also putting money into a brokerage fund, since we kind of forgot.
Back to the Roth for a second.
Yeah.
Scott Trench and I host the BiggerPockets Money podcast, and we have a difference of opinion on contributing to the Roth. I don't contribute to a Roth 401k, and I do have the option. I contribute to a traditional 401k because I'm trying to reduce my taxable income.
Right.
Scott contributes to the Roth because he believes that in the future, he's going to have higher income. And this could just be a difference of our goals. I am significantly older than Scott is, and I am not looking for more income once I stop working at BiggerPockets in, 400 years.
Right. But for me, it was if I was 24 years old again, that's what I would do.
Okay.
See, that's the difference. Yes. When it finally became available at my company, I really didn't use it that much. I only put a small percent into the Roth 401k because I wanted the tax write-off too, because our incomes were getting bigger and bigger, and I wanted the immediate tax benefit. But if I was 24, I would go with the Roth.
Okay. Yes. And that is... there's all these different factors that come into play, and I'm asking you right off the cuff. That's true. When I am talking to people who are younger, I definitely encourage them to do the Roth because of you pay taxes now. So typically, if you're in your 20s, you're going to be making less at that time than you will be in your 40s or 50s. Or you're going to want the opportunity to access those funds without paying income tax on them. So you put the money in the Roth now and you pay taxes at your current income tax bracket. And then it grows tax-free. And when you go to withdraw it, you're withdrawing that and paying no tax on it. So I really like the Roth plans, but I am, shockingly, I am not 24.
Yeah, me neither. Wish I was. Sometimes I think I am, but.
Yeah, sometimes I act like it.
Yeah, well, I know I do.
How do you think pursuing financial independence changes the way that people perceive work and life?
Oh, I know for me, I was always pretty into my companies that I worked for. And then when I had a little bit of where you can kind of see the finish line, it's like it kind of changed my attitude a little bit. It's like, I'm really there for me. I'm not there for them. I'm there to make as much money as I can and put this away so that I can accomplish a goal. And I became a little more selfish, I guess would be the word. And I actually felt that was okay because it helped me and it helped our family. So, but once I kind of had that dialed in a little bit, it's like, here we go.
I have noticed that I am more apt to question something that I may not agree with or may just want more information about than I was back when I was 20. And, your boss would say something like, well, I don't really like that, but I need this job, so I'm not going to ask. And now that I have reached financial independence, they'll say, the sky is green. Well, excuse me, I don't think it is. I think it's blue. and, start a conversation. It's not a disrespectful conversation, but it's definitely I have questions and I'm not just going to sit here and take it kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, I always felt like, I spoke my mind most of the time, but I did it, I tried to stay in control and be extremely respectful. And as I got older and had, a little more I'm like, you know what, here's how I really feel and here's why. You know what, my opinion, I've worked for 30-something years. You should respect my opinion as much as I respect yours.
Exactly. I would not recommend anybody being disrespectful to their boss,
right,
unless you'd like that one-way ticket to early retirement, not on your terms.
I was fortunate. I always had good bosses, so I liked all my bosses.
I was going to say, that makes one of us. I've got a great boss now, but no, I have, in other jobs, I have had bosses where I'm like, well, you are 100% the reason I'm leaving this job.
Yes. Yeah, I understand.
So, John, what is your biggest takeaway from pursuing financial independence that you would like to share with our audience?
I think the biggest takeaway is you just got to get started and you have to be consistent and disciplined. I think that is the biggest takeaway. Get your money going. If it's 5%, 10%, whatever, just get going. And if you can, a lot of 401k plans, they'll increase it 1% each year, that type of thing. Sign up for that if you're not disciplined enough to do it on your own. But I think you just got to get going. We always did a minimum 15% saved or invested. So, and if you can do more, that's awesome. But to just automate it and just get it going, the next thing you'll be 50 and you go, oh, wow, I got a couple $1,000,000.
Well, I can't argue with that advice because you are clearly a shining example that it does in fact work. And Carl and I have been investing for 30 years. It's just slow and steady wins the race.
And for me, I looked at that and go, I wasn't the smartest guy in the world. I didn't have great grades in college. I barely made it in 4 years, but I made it. I was in advertising sales my entire career. It's hard. It's really hard. But I still made it because I had discipline and I had grit, and it just, you can't whine about it. You just have to suck it up sometimes and do things maybe you don't want to do, but if you have a goal, you have to try and reach that goal somehow, and you have to bear down.
Yeah, and pursuing the goal is going to get you there or get you close.
Yes.
If you have the goal and you're like, but you don't do anything to pursue it, you're really not going to get there.
Effort all the time.
John, thank you so much for your time today. This was so much fun. Is there anywhere that our listeners can find you online?
You can follow me on Twitter at the Gen X Millionaire.
Gen X Millionaire. Yes. Join me in following John because he has some great things to say.
Sometimes.
All right. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more inspiring fire videos just like John's. This is Mindy Jensen signing off.